how long have you been working on That's Huge?
On the album.
Hmm.
Oh, far out, man. I mean, like from the inception of the songs, like a couple of years, like year and a half. Like we generally the way the band works, all of our songs come from jams, and we initially record the jam and then kind of piece it together with vocals and everything and all the bits and pieces and then start playing them, and we like to let them develop a little bit before we actually start recording them. So what we are initially playing live, at shows and that sort of thing, when we first start playing songs, won't always be what ends up in the finished product.
Hmm.
It's not until they've sort of had time to gestate and we've decided, right, it's time to get into recording, that we'll actually get involved with it. So yeah, sort of been jamming on the songs for about a year and a half, and yeah.
It it must be strange for people who have seen these songs being performed live, and then they're going to hear it on the album and be like, "What? That bit doesn't go there. What?"
If like the structures generally remain pretty similar, but it's like if people have been to a show in at least like the last 6 months, sort of thing, it's like they'll recognize the songs, they'll know the songs, they sort of solidify over time. And it's like I said, structures generally tend to stay the same. It's more so parts that evolve and change.
Yeah. What's the music scene like in Bundaberg?
Really good.
Huh?
Ridiculous, actually. Ridiculously good. I liken it to what's happening in Nambour at the moment. There's just a crazy music scene that's popped up out of nowhere down there in the sunny coast, and also down Lismore in the Northern Rivers and that whole area. Um, it's just like there's all these bands. There's seemingly like a ridiculous number of bands, and they're all doing their own thing, and it's not the same members consistently. Like, sure, some bands will share members here and there, but generally each band is very independent and very sort of, their own thing. But at the same time, everyone's working together, everyone's aware of each other, and everyone is always on, we share the lineups as well, sort of thing. There's East Coast Alternative that puts on a lot of the gigs up here now, and it's great, because we obviously quite often get bands hitting us up to come up and play the area and that sort of thing, and there's never a shortage of locals, to jump on the bills and support.
Nice. How does the how does the songs on That's Huge compare sonically with Von Wunderberg? Am I pronouncing that right?
You are. That was incidentally a silly name that we came up with last minute. I mean, both album titles are pretty ridiculous, but um, von Bundaberg, just quickly, is out of Bundaberg. Basically, it's the German out of Bundaberg, and that's, yeah. It was this silly joke, straight out of Bundaberg kind of thing. We went, well, let's just make it German and go von Wunderberg, So yeah, that's the story behind that. Sonically, the comparison, That's Huge is definitely heavier. It's definitely got a much more of an edge to it, much more of a developed songwriting. Like Von Vonderberg, we were kind of just like, it was the first thing we'd written as a band, and we were very green to the format, because obviously in our band with Exotic Potion Cookies, it's like we've got a drum kit, a guitar, and a keyboard. And so, understanding how those instruments interact with each other, and writing bass lines on a keyboard, to your typical sort of alternative sort of music, is a bit of a different thing that isn't done so often. It's sort of, we're treading on very we're exploring where so von Vonderberg was very much a lot more jammy, a lot more just testing the waters. And That's Huge is definitely a solidified step. It's like, right, we've worked out sort of some of the parameters of what can be done, which are honestly only just going to grow and evolve further and further with the new music that we write, as we understand the format more and more. But no, honestly, really stoked with how it all came out. It's sounds decent, you know. Like it's always nice when you listen back to your album and you go, you know what, this is actually pretty cool. And just the quality, we put a lot of effort into pre-production and really getting our metronome tracks right and really being tight on the playing and the performances. And you know, it's just come together really great, really enjoyable. It's a really good time to listen to. And I've got to say, every other album that we've released as a band, or I've released as an artist, you know, it's sort of like, you know, you get a bit over it during the recording process, and you sort of go like, you know what, I've done this, I've listened to this song that many times, I've played this song that many times, I'm sick to death of it. And you listen to the finished product and you go, you know what, yeah, that's cool, all right, that's sweet, let's kind of move forward now. But this album, I'm like, this actually, I enjoy listening to this. You know, it's actually one that I can go back to and listen to again and go, this is actually cool. I actually really dig it. So yeah, it's nice.
Nice, man. Hey, who came up with the artwork? Like, what was the concept that you gave them?
Um, okay, so that's Tristan Tate is our man in Melbourne. He's an independent artist, and he does pretty much, well, has done all of our art, sorry, since even the last incarnation of the band. Before Potion Cookies, we were Odysseus Reborn, and we used to do quite a different thing. But yeah, back to the art. The guy has done most of our art. He's a really good artist. The inspiration that we gave him was listen to the album. We gave him an early rough version of the album and just went, you know what, we just want you to listen to this and draw while you listen to it and just see what you come up with. And we sort of gave him a few directions as far as, you know, a few example sort of album covers of this is the style that we're sort of going for. But as far as the actual images themselves, just go nuts, and whatever you hear, whatever you feel, go for it. And a little bit of bouncing back and forth, just to make sure we got the aesthetic the way we were looking for. But he pretty well nailed it in the first iteration.
Yeah, nice. Valley of the Serpent is a bit of a love letter to old school gaming, with a fantastic video, by the way.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun filming that one. Um, yeah, old school gaming in general, right? Just all like all the three of us were all pretty into our games and that sort of thing. And you know, I think it sort of spawned again. It was from a jam, and we just had that 8-bit kind of sample on the keyboard, and that was what was used in the jam, and it just sounded so gamey, and it kind of just evolved like that. The song itself, and then as far as the video clip, it was like we spent a bit of money on the first single video clip, Ill Transmission, getting that done with some decent videographers and local people in Bundaberg who are, you know, very, you know, proficient with what they do. But basically, you know, we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up and new merch, and we're actually sneaky getting vinyl done for this album, which is, anyone who knows that's done that, is it's not cheap at
Mm.
all. So we're like, right, we don't have the budget to go and hire these people again and do, you know, a U-Butte video clip. So let's just kind of half-ass it and do it ourselves. And like, you know, 2 weeks prior to releasing it, we're like, fuck, we're supposed to be releasing this in like 2 weeks' time. Um, I guess we'll just start doing things. And it's like, you know, we had the narrative from the song itself, but as far as the actual things in the video, we're just like, let's just kind of do things and see what happens. And luckily, Rob, our drummer, is quite, well, proficient enough in game making, on the old classic game maker from high
Mm.
school. Like we used to do a lot of that sort of thing back in the day. So we created that full game, Valley of the Serpent, on Game Maker. And we're actually hoping to release that as a playable game in a few months as well, with the song sort of thing. So it's a little interactive sort of experience. But yeah, man, that's pretty much the story behind that whole song and the video clip and everything. It was just thrown together, and again, it came out kind of fun, you know.
Yeah,
It was like the watching it back, it's like, wow, this is actually fun. It's actually
yeah.
just a really fun time.
Um, Out of curiosity, how old are you?
28. No, wait, sorry, Farad, I'm a few years off. I'm turning 30 this year.
Wow,
Scary,
I know, right?
scary. It's like,
Um,
ooh,
it's funny, you know, the N64 cartridge and all that kind of good stuff that you had in there. Some bright spark went and scanned in all the old editions of Hyper magazine. Now, Hyper was a game magazine that an Australian games magazine that from the early 90s that I read growing up. And so I'm going through this and literally reading full editions from like 1994, 1993, and seeing them talking about the game Doom as it was new technology. And it is
yeah, right.
this biggest gaming nostalgia trip. You know, they're like, oh my God, Nintendo's got it's going to be a 64-bit console. It's called
Yeah,
the Ultra 64 and this thing, like, oh my,
it's wild. Hey,
yeah,
there was actually a really good doco I watched, I think, on Netflix a little while back, on that whole the console wars, you know, when they
yeah,
started, and all that sort of thing, and Sega coming in, and you know, Sony coming in then as well, and like Nintendo just owned it for so long, right? It was like, yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy to think how times change, eh?
What were some of your pivotal video games growing up?
Whew, okay, so obviously big into 64. I was probably like a little bit of a latecomer to you know, console gaming and that sort of thing. Because my mate had a Nintendo 64, and eventually I managed to actually buy it off him because I think he was getting an upgrade. And you know, I was probably maybe like 10 or 11 at the time, and managed to summon up the $50 that he wanted for, you know, the console, and like 6 games or something. But oh man, like Donkey Kong 64, 100%. Mario Kart 64, excellent time. Just the classics, man. Like, yeah, or Banjo Kazooie. Even just, yeah, the Super Mario 64, all the 64 games, like big time on those. And
I'm
then got
I'm
into
frankly
Xbox.
offended that you have not mentioned GoldenEye. Like, come on.
Oh, dude, I've got GoldenEye. I've got GoldenEye. That was a later one for me though, to be honest.
Fair.
Like I didn't get to play that in childhood so much, but I became aware of this thing that was like, oh, the GoldenEye game. Okay, yeah, cool. And I think I used to play it around a mate's place, actually. That was one of those ones, along with Super Smash Brothers as well.
Yeah. As someone who was
Another classic.
10 in 1995, I cannot explain to you just how fucking cash that shit was when it first came out.
Nah, man, great times. Going around your mate's place and just, yeah, getting the 4 player set up with the 4 controllers, and
Oh.
just, yeah, man, fantastic, good times. There's something about it, eh? I think there's something to be said, like, you don't have to have good graphics to have a good game.
No.
It's like, yeah, it helps, and gameplay and playability and all that sort of thing, yeah. But yeah, I think it really comes down to the you know, the internal sort of, well, I guess, yeah, the gameplay,
Mm,
you know, the actual crux of it, you know. It's not how good it looks, it's how fun it is.
100%. So
Yeah.
what were some pivotal albums for you?
Personally,
Hmm.
um see, I had a little bit of a different upbringing, in terms of very classical, you know. There was classical music and there was rubbish in my household, with mum particularly. Like, I'm grateful, you know, I'm grateful for the classical exposure and that sort of thing. But yeah, it wasn't until I was probably about getting into high school, you know, I was probably like grade 7 or so, I started to recognize, like, I think, like, Tribute was one of the few songs that kind of pierced through the by Tenacious D, pierced through the dome sort of thing, because it's like you couldn't avoid that song when it came out. I guess that was like probably when I
Yeah.
was still in primary school. But yeah, so I mean that was one of my first exposures to alternative music in general. But then as far as, like, I started getting in, we got into Guitar Hero in a really big way. When I first played Guitar Hero 3, I'd never heard any of the songs on it at all. I don't know how familiar you are with the
Mm.
soundtrack of that, but there's just so many classic songs on that game. And that's when I really started to sort of pick into alternative music and start going, oh, this is really cool. Big breakthrough with System of a Down.
Hmm.
Finding them, and I'm not sure what album I listened to first, to be completely honest. But it was just like delving into System. It was like I found one or two songs, and then I'm like, right, okay, this is really cool. I've got to get into this more. And just started listening pretty much to all their albums, probably right around the same time, because I had a mate, it was back in the day sort of thing, and he had a USB with a bunch of files on it, and he's like, "Yep, here you go," and gives me all the System of a Down songs, and I'm like, "Sweet, let's go." And then Metallica. After that, dived down the Metallica strain and did all of that for a while, and far out, man. The rest is history. I don't know. It's like I've got my favorite artists, but it's like, as far as like big pivotal albums, I mean, big Maiden fan, when I discovered Iron Maiden and started going down that trail. And yeah, it's crazy, man. It's a big wide world of music, hey.
It absolutely is. And speaking of the wide world of music, what was the genesis of Exotica Fest?
Really, it was like this crazy idea that I had probably about like midway through last year. And I'm like, just so often where, you go around, we go around a fair bit, and we play a fair few gigs around the place. And I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit of a, what's the word, like, stickler, or I wouldn't say purist, because it's like I like the weird stuff, So it's like, it's very rare that we play on a bill, and I really sort of get a band where I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like, they're clearly doing something very different.
Mm.
Um, there's so many bands that honestly just kind of sound like every other band, and there's just so many that it's like, oh, yep, you sound like that, and you sound like that. And occasionally we come across, these bands that are like, oh, they're actually doing something their own, and individual, and independent, and it sounds really cool. I really appreciate artists who really try to be outside the box, creatively. So, and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, we know at least sort of one of these types of bands in each town, that we go around. And I'm like, what if we got all these weirdos together in the one place, and if not for the showcase of the weird and wonderful of the East Coast scene, of the underground East Coast scene, then at least so all these people know that they all exist,
Mm.
because I'm like, we're all doing the same sort of thing, where we're all sort of just trying to do our own thing and be a little bit original and be a little bit outside the box. And I think that's great. I think that's a really great thing. And I think that's the beauty of art in general, right? Is just being crazy with it, being wild with it, and just stepping outside the box. And I'm like, so let's try and do a festival and see if there's enough interest from all these different bands. And I think, the response has been great from all of the bands, at least. I mean, it's a whole other thing trying to promote in the Brisbane scene. Much appreciated to yourself with Sense Metal Music. Sense, am I saying that?
Music
Sense
media.
Media?
Sense
Sense
music
Music
media.
Media. Sorry. Much appreciated to yourself with that. Because obviously, like, we're contacting everyone, and as much as we can, sort of thing. But as far as the actual bands go, it's been great. Everyone's just super keen, and it's really about that attitude, I think, as well, of all getting together and all being outsiders together, which I guess is kind of metal and alternative music in general.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I like it, man. I'm really looking forward to this. Um,
Heck yeah.
what are some, lastly, I guess, what are some artists that you see as true creative geniuses and why?
Okay. Frank Zappa, 100%. 100%. Crazy man. Ridiculous. Okay, so you know, he's an artist that I guess you don't hear too many people these days really talk about. Because he's a weirdo, 100%. You
Mm,
know, he's right outside the box. A lot of his music, if you want to call it that, even, it's like, and he says that himself as well, in interviews and that sort of thing. He's like, some of my stuff, if you can call it music.
mm,
um but he's self-taught, pretty much a self-taught musician, which is ridiculous. The man's a genius. The fact that he wrote and composed music for his bands, his 12-piece bands and that sort of thing. Just an incredibly high level, that was, his requirements for his musicians in his band and that sort of thing. His song structures, his ideas, his concepts. I mean, the man wrote, like, I think it was, I don't know if it's like 70 albums thereabouts in his lifetime, released 70 albums, and he died at like 55, and so you do the maths of that. If
mm.
he started releasing music at like 18, 19 thereabouts, it's like that's like three albums a year. Like, that's crazy. And it's like, granted, some of that's live music and that sort of thing, but even so, just a ridiculously talented artist. And just one of those people that they only come around once in a blue moon sort of thing. Um, Other ones, I guess, like, the classical I mentioned earlier, Chopin, another ridiculously incredible person, and again died at, like, I think 39, um, and a ridiculous amount of amazing music. Um, like a lot of the classical composers, Beethoven as well. I don't know if you know, like, For Release, that one song, didn't even release it, right? It was found in his home after he died, and then it was released, and it's like one of the most well-known classical
Mm.
pieces now. It's crazy, man. That sort of thing. I don't know. There's, like, I guess, some more lower level artists who, you know, I'd consider to be on that genius scale, but yeah, I think as far as, like, top tier, I'd put Zappa in with those classical musicians, and yeah, they'd be my top tier
That's
picks.
easy. Alex, thanks very much for your time, man. I'm really looking forward to Exotica Fest.
Thank you, Tom,
Yeah, man, I'll come say hi. Looking forward to finally checking you out.
for sure. No, really appreciate this. So,
No worries, mate. Talk to you soon.
thank you.